Welcome to the Sports Card Lessons Podcast. I'm your host, Big Ken. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on a streaming service, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. You'll be notified whenever I drop any new content. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Happy Monday. Apologize, this is dropping a little late, but you know how I roll after a 2-day show. I always think, or I'm starting now to think it's better to come home, decompress, think about the show, take some notes, sleep on it, record the next day. And I always feel like the episodes come with better energy. So here we are on Monday. The North East Card Expo in Stanford, Connecticut. Not Norwalk, like I mentioned twice in the last episode. And a few of you reached out and messaged me and with the correction. I only live in the state, right? In my own defense, I had something else going on last week in Norwalk, and I was just stuck in my mind that it was in Norwalk. So sorry about that. And for most of you who are in this area, a couple days before this show, there was this terrible car crash and fire on I-95, just a few exits away from where the show was being held at Chelsea Piers. So I was worried, and I think most people were worried, if the traffic was going to be a problem with the highway shut down. I mean, we were watching the news, and they're talking about 3 and 4 hour delays on Friday. I think the crash happened on Thursday. So Friday they were talking about, just massive delays, not only there, but on the other highways that, the alternate routes to get there. But pleasantly surprised, that didn't have, I don't think that had any impact on the show, right? Lots of foot traffic. It was really strong Saturday. I mean, the foot traffic was really strong Saturday, and it was pretty strong on Sunday. Sundays you have those periods, it's a little slow at the beginning, a little slow at the end, but in the middle, it definitely, it got busy there. And a lot of people I know at the show with the right inventory were just cleaned out. Their cases were emptied. Most of us, and I say us, the people I talked to, went home Saturday thinking, geez, I got to go home and find some more product to bring back to have something to fill up the spaces in the cases on Sunday. The show itself, I think, was run really great. Great signage, and you're pulling in. I mean, I think it's a great location to begin with. It was almost right off the highway. Pulling in, I mean, for a dealer pulling in, for the vendors, the dealer the signage was, where to park, where to unload, where to bring your stuff in. The communications with the emails before, with pictures and arrows and maps where to go. It was, I think it was just set up really well. People there when we showed up greeting you, as soon as you came through the door. What's your name? Here's your badge. Here's your parking pass. Let me walk you to your table. I'll show you where your table is. I had walked that show last year. That was being held at a hotel. And this venue here was definitely 100 times better, my opinion, than the hotel location. And the show itself was like an indoor soccer field. So it was on artificial turf, but it was just wide open. Nice big open room. The tables were set up really well. Lots of room for the dealers, behind the table. Some of these shows you get to, the have no room at all behind your table or your back. Your two chairs are back to back with a guy behind you, but there was plenty of room here. One thing I don't always, but I'll point out because it bothers me to go into a room that's not well lit to go to a show, and this room definitely obviously, if it's a stadium, it's like stadium lights on in there. The lighting was really great in there. And it was a great flow for people just walking through. There was just a it was I think with so much space being spaced out, you didn't have people like packed in aisles and things like that. And I think that makes a big difference. I think it just makes it, I think people are just more comfortable when there's a lot more room. I know I am when there's a lot more room to move around, even if there's a few people at the table. I mean, that's fine, but you've got, 5, 6 feet behind them before you're, anybody else is, piling up for a table, maybe on the backside, things like that. And I just think that makes a big difference. Some of the shows you go to when these rows are so narrow, and you're like trying to get up a row, and you're dodging in and out of people, bumping into people. I just think that just the wear and tear of that of the day, it just wears you down. And I think this again, the setup was just great. Let's jump into the show. The only thing I would have changed about this show is I would have had it start at 9 a.m. on Saturday. I'm not sure what the decision was on that. There could have been maybe a facility decision or something like that. But if it was possible, the only suggestion I would say is start at 9 a.m. on Saturday. And I think most dealers are used to the 9 a.m. start. We're all set up. We're ready to go by 8 a.m. We're out shopping already. So that extra, I mean, I guess it gave us an extra hour to shop, right, amongst ourselves. But if possible, I would have started this at 9. The repackers were there bright and early on Saturday morning, trying to empty as many people's cases as they could. I myself did not draw the attention of the repackers, because the things I had in my case were not what they were looking for and not what they were buying, but that's okay with me. The things that they were buying, I mean, if I brought all my cards, I would have sold every one of my cards there. But again, I've talked about this. These cards are not going to get out there until probably June. So another month and a half away from me getting those cards out and hoping that it'd be a nice surge right before the National. This was the show. A lot of those PSA 9s and the cheap PSA 10s that I got back from PSA. This is the show that I loaded up the case with, because it was the only inventory I had really to put in there, besides my Caitlin Clark stuff and some baseball cards. And I'll say right away, I've freshly graded baseball cards. I didn't sell one baseball card. And I've had this conversation with a number of people that talk baseball, it's the way to go. But I don't know. I don't see it. I don't get it. I just feel, you know, I'm not going to get into the whole thing, because it's gonna cause a whole other comment. As soon as this airs today, I'm going to get people saying to me, "How can you be knocking baseball again?" And I'm sorry, but I'm hoping that baseball would sell. I'm putting these baseball cards in and nobody's even saying like, will you take this or that, or can I have it for free? I mean, nothing. Nobody even mentions the baseball card. So, obviously it's not the right. And I brought, I had the Jason Dominguez card, right? I'm bringing these Yankees cards down there, so I'm hoping that, this is where people, what people are going to want down there. But it just didn't happen for me. But Saturday morning, to get back into it, Saturday morning, the repackers came in. They kind of started on one side of the room. I could see what was going on. I could see them pulling card after card after card out of people's cases, and they got the phones out and they're calculating. And I'm like, oh, I better go shopping. But I'm going to start on the back side of the room. So they were on the front side of the room. I went to the back side of the room, and I started doing some shopping, looking around, trying to make deals. I wanted to buy up some cars before they got there, right? And I knew what they were buying. So I ended up making some deals. I picked up like a dozen cards. I picked up like 12 cards, not getting any steals by any means, because the dealers know, they can see, hey, there's the repackers are over there. So, you're not getting these things at a real steal, but enough that I can buy these cards and make a few dollars on them, put them in my case, if they sell. Uh, when the regular, my thought with all this is that if the repackers go through and they clean out the room, what's left when the regular crowd shuffles in, right? When they're coming in to buy, what's left in the room for them to buy if these guys, because these guys aren't buying the cards and dropping them in their cases, they're buying the cards and they're putting them in their bags, right? These cards are leaving the room. They're not the money's staying, the cards are leaving. So when the people come in looking for these cards and the repackers have already been through, what's left for them to buy? Right. So that's my thought. So if I could get these cards and get them back in my case, at least there's going to be something. And hopefully people are going to pay strong on them, right? I mean, it just depends on who the person is buying, right? Some people will come in and pay strong. Some people will come in and they'll want, you know, very low. But at that point, the prices are very fresh in my mind. I know exactly what my margin is on every, all these cards that I just bought. So I know it's either yes or no, or I could do this, but I can't do that type of thing. And I was right. Right. So by the end of the day on Saturday, I mean, I always say by the end of the day, probably within a few hours of the show starting, I was able to sell out every one of those cards that I bought, and empty out my cases besides my baseball and a few other things, the old fashioned way, right? The one at a time. The Caitlin Clarks, and I'm a believer, right? I mean, I've talked about the women's sports and things like that, and tons of Caitlin Clark cards, and I was selling those cards because I felt at some point, sell them up to the draft, to the WNBA draft, because after the draft, it's going to calm down. It's gonna all these things that I'm thinking, but anything I'm thinking, it's just not happening. Her cards are still selling like hotcakes. Like, I started the weekend with 6 of her cards in my case, and I thought probably 4 too many, right? And thinking that it's probably at the end, I'm probably going to end up with these cards or end up having to discount these cards because I'm thinking people just aren't going to continue. I just can't see this, this keep going, but it is. I mean, I'm excited for it. I'm glad it is. I started the weekend with 6 cards, and I purchased 8 more cards in that room on Saturday. All those cards, I sold them all out, and as soon as people see, stop, and they're all like, "Oh, Caitlin Clark. Oh, can I see this card? Can I see that card?" It's just probably one of the, you know, a better seller than C.J. Stroud and Anthony Richardson right now in my case. I mean, it's just it's incredible how well she's still selling, and she's going to continue to sell. I know she is, but I just figured, and I think I talked about this on here. I just figured that everybody's going to wait for the WNBA stuff to come out. It's going to calm down, but I think maybe because the draft and now all of a sudden they're already starting to get going. There's already some videos of her playing, for her team and things like that. So I think maybe that just keeps it going, keeps the hype going for her. Um, but yeah, very happy about that. Saturday was a busy day. I haven't had a show like, that busy in a long time. And I know when the show is busy, when it gets to the afternoon and I realize I haven't sat down and I really haven't eaten and my feet are starting to hurt, my legs are a little sore, right? So that's the way, when I first started setting up as a dealer, that's the way the shows went all the time. And then we've got into this lull of, shows where you can kind of sit down and wait for somebody to come to your table and then stand up and sit down and stand up. Um, I know when I did the Mohegan show, that's similar to that, where it was just constant all day, where you really didn't have time to sit down. And this show is the same way. At the end of when it got to the late afternoon, you realize, like, I'm tired, my feet are hurting, I'm hungry. That's how for me, that's how I know it's a good show. um, and lots of customer interaction, right? A lot of people coming up. I say customers, listeners coming up, lots of familiar faces. And the location itself not only drew from Connecticut, but also from New York and New Jersey, right? So there was a good draw, and I set up all the time. I know a lot of these people that are coming to the shows. Even Sunday, now Sunday started at 9 a.m. The show started Sunday at 9 a.m. But by 11 o'clock, it started to get busy, and it seemed to be busy right up till about 2 o'clock. Like it was just constant flow of traffic. And then it started to slow down a little bit. And I noticed, like, it's funny because you notice that some of the dealers were starting to pack up to go. And the people that were still coming into the show were really like the people who decided to stay the day on Sunday, stayed to the end of the day on Sunday. I think they did well. I mean, even late in the day, I was still selling cards late in the day on Sunday, which is really not, usually at a show later in the day on Sunday, you're hoping you're going to get a sale come through, but usually late in the day on Sunday, people are done buying. And a lot of times it's the dealers that are out walking around shopping at that point of the day. But, dealers were packing up. People were still coming in. I still had people at my table. I said, look, I still have people coming to my table. I'm not leaving. I'm going to stay here until it's done. I have to say, on Saturday, right, the show ended at 6 on Saturday, and I planned on getting out of there about 4 o'clock, 4:30. I wasn't sure of the traffic situation on Saturday, but I had some plans for Saturday night, and I needed to get home. So I wanted to make sure that I was going to be able to get home. So then 4 o'clock, 4:30 came, still busy. 5 o'clock, still had customers at my table, solid, buying things. It slowed down. My table emptied out. I said, okay, let me start packing up my my showcase cards. I just cover everything else out of the value boxes. I'll just cover, but started packing up the showcase cards, and people came up and they were just going through the value boxes. I was almost there till 6 o'clock, right? Because the people were just there. I mean, you can't leave while people are still picking through your cards and they still want to buy. I never expected it to be that busy that late on Saturday, but I was happy it was. And I know you're all worried, but yes, I was able to get home in time to. It was a little close, but I got home in time. And even Saturday night, I was one of those people. Saturday night, late Saturday night, I'm like, you know what? I better go through cards and see if there's something else I can bring just to fill in some places in my on my case, because my case was half empty at this point. So I pulled out some cards, those cards that I put aside, and I just said to myself, I'm going to be firm on these prices, so. And the prices I was firm at was over comps. And I was just going to be that guy saying, I'm firm. This is the price. I'm firm on that price. And I'm really just doing this to fill up my showcase, right? So brought those cards back at it on Sunday. Sunday was a big day for me, being successful on Saturday, selling. Sunday, I made some big purchases. Not something I usually do. But I picked up two pretty big cards for two very different reasons on Sunday. And on Saturday, one thing I noticed on Saturday, people were just looking for case hits. Like if you had, the kabooms, the downtowns, the night moves, any of those cards in your case, people were just buying them. They were just coming and they weren't leaving till they made a deal. And I know that, excuse me, I know the sweet spot with the case hits is probably like 800 to about 2K. But I went a little bit higher on my case hit. My guy Hank, I'm sorry, I gotta get a little drink. Hold on a minute. My guy Hank from Hank Sports Cards, he showed up at my table. I know Hank. I've known Hank for years. Him and his mom. come to the shows. He showed up at my table with this 2020 Jalen Hurts Kaboom PSA 10. Just going to hold that up if you're on YouTube. Probably a little more than I wanted to spend on a Kaboom. But one, it's a case hit. Two, it's low pop with sales. And three, I think there's room for the value to move up on this card. And I'll talk about the other card I bought too. But on both of these cards, I was able to trade card in cash, and wanted just to touch base a little bit on that. I'm very conscious when I'm buying cards and I'm putting cards in the case and how much people pay attention to cards. And sometimes you put cards in your case like I thought were great cards, and other people think, wow, that's a great card, but nobody ever really makes an offer on it. Nobody ever really makes a move to buy the card. And of course, all my cards are priced, so they know what my prices are. And after I've been sitting on a card for a while, and people will, after a few shows, people will come up and they'll see one of those cards and they'll look at me and go, oh yeah, I remember you. I remember this card. Good for them, bad for me, right? Because I'm thinking, if people are remembering about a card that I've had for too long in my case, probably time to get rid of it. So I have to make a decision, do I discount the price more or do I try to work it into something else? So I had some cards in my case that I've been carrying around for a while that I made a decision, probably at the last show I was at, not even this show, but this show it actually worked out, was to be able to say, let me move this card for whatever value it is, and then get into something else that I think I have a better chance with. And I'm not saying like I could refer to, I used to refer to cards as stale cards, but the cards that I moved, weren't so much stale. They were cards that people really desired, but I just wasn't getting the customers to my table that wanted to buy those cards. I go online and I see these cards selling online. I see other people buying and selling these cards, and I think to myself, what did I do wrong? And maybe it's because that's not my lane. Maybe people aren't coming to my case and saying, oh, Ken, I'm looking for this or that, or I'm going to find this in his case. Maybe those particular cards, one was a basketball card, one was a hockey card, right? And I did have hockey cards, but this was the only hockey card I had, because it was a higher value card that I kept in my case. So sometimes when you run into that, right, the cards, maybe in my case, maybe in somebody else's case, and other people are happy to have them, and other people could probably move those cards. So they know somebody when they're taking this card, right? They know exactly where this card is going, what they're going to do with that card, whether they have somebody to buy it or they're going to put it on auction or whatever they're going to do. They know exactly when they're taking that card. So it almost turns into a win-win for both of us. So, with the Kaboom and this next card I got here, I was able to do cards in cash. So I'm happy to move cards that I'm not being able to move, and then put cash on top of it, right? And then come out with a bigger card. The second card here, and this card I got, the guy I was set up with next to Zwittlerbug Cards, my guy Rich, had this 2020 Panini Contenders Joe Burrow autographed red zone PSA 10. He had this in his case. I saw it Saturday and I thought to myself, I have to figure out a way to get that card. I love this card. I looked up the value of this card and said, well, I'm not coming all cash with this card. It's going to have to be, a trade. So we're friends. And I said to him, hey, if you have interest in this card here, we could probably get a deal done. And we talked about it on Saturday and we talked about it Sunday morning and we worked out a deal. Shout out to him. I'm super excited to have this card, and I know he's a little excited to get the card he got too, because he's got plans for that card, right? So it was a win-win on both sides. This card here, the Burrow card, is another low pop with sales. And he was hurt last year. So I went back and I kind of looked at the sales of this card before he got hurt, what it was going for and how much it dropped when he got hurt. Because I have a couple other Burrow cards that I watched those prices drop way down, and I know that the value of those cards, that he comes back and he just starts playing well, those things are going to jump right back up again. People are going to be excited for that. All we need is, I mean, I think it was his thumb, right? I mean, all we need is good news, that he's 100% ready to go, and I think his value comes back up again. Because there's not a lot of quarterback. You think about it, there's not a lot of quarterbacks to be prospecting out there right now. A lot of these guys that, these 20, I talked about, it was the last episode, 2 episodes ago, these 2021 rookies, these 2022 rookie quarterbacks, they're all falling off. So now we're back to we're back to Mahomes and Allen and Burrow and Herbert from 2020, Lawrence from 21, right? And people are still kind of feeling a little funny about him, I think. And then we got these new guys that are out, but we really don't know. We have a small sample, of some of these new guys. So there's not a lot of quarterbacks to be, buying into. So I think, for me, it was a good move. I hope so. I'll definitely keep you updated. But on top of it, I'm happy to move cards out of my case that weren't selling anyways, right? So need to turn the case over. And this weekend was very successful for me turning my case over. My next show, now I have, a ton of cards out at PSA, and I'm hoping that my next show, that I'm setting up at, is Fenway, and I hope those cards come. But I've got some other cards here that I can break out for the Fenway show, but I'm really hoping that these orders come back in. But my case is going to have a new look. So when people show up and they look at my case at this point, they're not going to look down and look up at me and say, "I remember you." Hopefully they'll look at my face and say, "Hey, I seen you from that YouTube video," right? And not by, these cards that I've been sitting on in my case for too long. And I know it goes against my greater plan. I've talked about this, not getting into bigger cards. Um, but I think people are just trying to get out of these bigger cards right now. I've always talked about trying to zig when everybody's zagging, right? Um, for me, as long as I feel confident, and I do feel confident, I'm not going to lose. I'm not going to lose money on these cards. And I really feel pretty good that I'm going to make a little money on these cards. And there's also even a bigger possibility that I could trade down for some cards, trade these cards, somebody who wants a bigger card like I did, right? And trade down and get some other cards, some liquid cards that I might be able to move. So there's a lot of possibilities with these bigger cards. Um, not not what I planned on going into the weekend with you know, what my plan and what the old business plan is, but I came out on the other side. I was driving home, and of course, you feel a little nervous, right? You make big purchases, you feel a little nervous, but I'm pretty confident with these cards. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it by any means. Another pickup I had this weekend that actually really started the week before at the Toronto Expo. My guy, Tom Carril, Recognize Real. He messaged me. He was set up at the Toronto Expo. He messaged me that Trinity Rodman had come to his table. It was I'll hold it up, the Net Marvel Gold, number 2 of 10, SGC9. Messaged me. He said, "Hey, are you interested in this card? This is the price. 100%. Let's go. Get the card for me." And he was set up at the show this weekend, and I was able to finish the deal with him there and pick up this card. So again, shout out to the listeners that are coming across these Trinity Rodman cards, and hey, Sophia Smith too, right? Uh, happy to entertain, you know, all these messages to buy these cards. It's like having a set of eyes at different shows, right? And I really appreciate when these messages come through. The show itself, I mean, my little recap, it was a good sign. Seeing people spending money. I think a lot of what happened was the repackers, they were there early Saturday, emptied people's cases, filled up their wallets, right? So between dealers scrambling to try to buy cards to put back in their cases and attendees coming in to buy, you know, to buy cards and try to find, and I felt that I felt people were paying strong this weekend. The cards I was selling, I mean, of course, you get people that come in and they say, "Oh no, I have to be at this price, whatever." But on a lot of these cards, it was easier for me. And I talked about this. I just bought these cards from somebody else. I'll give you for instance, right? So I bought a card is comping at 210. I bought it, for 180, and I was saying, look, I got to be at 200 on this card. I'm not making a lot of money, right? But at least I'm making sales here. But as soon as and they start to go, the 180, no, I need to be at 190 and 200. That's I just tell them this is the price, and that sales. I mean, people were okay with that. It was either yes, I'm going to do it, or no, I'm not going to do it, and we didn't have to go any further. And a couple of times they just stopped and they're like, they'd say something else. I'd be like, no, 200 is where I'm at on the card, and they're like, is that your best? Yeah, that's it. That's the best I can do. Okay, I'll take it. Right. So it maybe doing that, having that little bit of a strategy at a show like this was perfect. I just felt people were paying strong and there were easy deals. I kind of said what I needed to get, and either they did or they didn't. But it was definitely a good sign, to see people paying strong and spending money. And also the lack of cards too, right? I mean, you have to think all these repackers are packing these cards up. They're not putting in their case. They're packing these cards up. They're putting in a bag that they're taking with them. Those cards are leaving the show. So there's that many less cards in that show that people are coming to buy. So when they see something they may want, and of course, some people show up and they see a card and they'll be like, no, this is my best. And then they leave and then they come back. If the card's still here, they'll be like, okay, I'll do that on that card. Like they kind of walked around and said, you know what? I'm probably not going to find this card anywhere else. Maybe I should just go back and buy it. And I know, and I think this happens to me, and I think it happens to a lot of people. People don't want to go to a show and leave empty-handed. Another good sign for the hobby, right? Shout out to Homer Sports Cards. He came by to visit me. We made a deal for a Jamar Chase card. He was actually there on Saturday looking at a Caitlin Clark card. And at the time, Saturday, there were a lot of those cards in the room. And he came back Sunday. He's like, what happened to Caitlin? I said, she's gone. Man, and everybody sold out. All those cards were gone. But always happy to see him and make a deal. Wednesday's episode, we're gonna have a guest on, so look forward to that. Next weekend at this time, just walking the Trumbull show on Saturday. No other plans yet, and then I will be back Monday with a new episode from me. But Wednesday we have an interview. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. And if you like what you hear, please definitely subscribe. And most importantly, tell a friend and spread the word. Till next time, take care of yourselves and everyone around you.